Once upon a time in a forest, there was a little acorn who dreamed of one day becoming a giant oak tree. The little acorn would look up to the tall oak trees with their branches reaching towards the sky, and leaves rustling in the wind, and dream of the day when he, too, could stand tall and proud. But as the little acorn looked down at his small and insignificant size, he would feel disheartened. He felt like just a tiny speck in a vast and uncaring world. And the dream of becoming a great oak seemed more like a fantasy than a reality. As the years passed, the little acorn watched other acorns around him sprout into young oak trees. But he remained unchanged. He began to lose hope that he would ever grow into a strong and majestic tree. One day, the little acorn decided to give up on his dream. He sat down on the forest floor and sighed, thinking that it was pointless to keep waiting. Just then, a wise old owl flew down and perched on a nearby branch. He noticed the little acorn sitting on the ground and asked him why he wasn't playing with the other acorns. The little acorn explained to the owl about his dream of becoming a giant oak tree and how he felt like he was too small to ever achieve his goal. The owl listened patiently and then said something that would change the little acorn's life forever. "Little acorn," the owl began, "you are not too small to achieve your dream. In fact, you are perfectly sized for it. You see, becoming a giant oak tree is not about your size, but about your patience, perseverance, and most importantly, your belief in yourself." The little acorn was confused. He didn't understand what the owl meant. The owl continued, "You may feel like you are just a tiny acorn in a big world, but that's not true. You are exactly where you need to be. You just need to be patient and trust in the process." The little acorn thought about the owl's words and realized that he had been wrong. He had been focusing on his size instead of his potential. He had been comparing himself to other acorns and trees and feeling discouraged. But the truth was, he was exactly where he needed to be. He just needed to be patient and trust in himself. With newfound determination, the little acorn decided to try again to become a giant oak tree. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and waited for the right moment to start his journey. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the little acorn began to feel a change within him. He was growing stronger and more resilient, and he knew that it was just a matter of time before he sprouted into an oak tree. One morning, the little acorn felt a tap on his shell. He opened his eyes and saw a ray of sunlight shining through the leaves of the trees. He had never noticed the sun so clearly before, and he realized that the owl had been right. He was exactly where he needed to be. The little acorn began to soak up the sunlight and use its energy to grow. He also started to absorb the water from the rain and the snow, which nourished him and made him stronger. As he continued to grow, he began to feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. He knew that he was on the right path and had his dream of becoming a giant oak tree was finally within reach. One day, after months of waiting, the little acorn found a crack in his shell. He wiggled his new shoot and pushed his way out of his shell. He looked around and saw the forest from a new perspective. He could see the tall trees that had been his companions for so long, and he realized that he was no longer a tiny acorn, but a young oak sapling. He reached up towards the sun and felt its warmth on his leaves. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the fresh air fill his branches. He was no longer the little acorn who had doubted himself. He was a young oak tree with a bright future ahead of him. As the young oak grew taller and stronger, he continued to soak up the sunlight and absorb the water from the rain and snow. He used this nourishment to fuel his growth and reach towards the sky. With each passing year, he grew a little taller, a little wider, and a little more resilient. One day, the young oak tree was struck by a storm. The wind howled and the rain poured, and the young oak tree felt like he would break. But as the storm raged on, the young oak tree stood firm. He remembered the words of the wise old owl and the lessons he had learned about patience, perseverance, and self-belief. The young oak tree continued to grow and thrive, and soon he became a majestic oak, just like the ones he had admired as a little acorn. His branches spread wide, providing shade to all who rested beneath them. His leaves rustled in the wind, creating a soothing sound that calmed those who heard it, and his roots ran deep, anchoring him firmly in the earth and giving him strength in times of trouble. As the years went by, the majestic oak became a symbol of wisdom and strength in the forest. The animals would come to him for advice, and the birds would build their nests in his branches. The majestic oak was content with his life. He had achieved his dream of becoming a giant oak tree, and he had learned the importance of patience, perseverance, and self-belief along the way. One day, a little acorn fell from a nearby oak tree and landed at the foot of the majestic oak. The little acorn looked up at the majestic oak and asked him how he could become a strong and wise tree like him. The majestic oak smiled and said, "It's simple, little acorn. All you need is patience, perseverance, and most importantly, belief in yourself." The little acorn thanked the majestic oak for his advice and set off on his own journey to become a great oak tree. As the little acorn grew and thrived, he never forgot the lessons he had learned from the majestic oak. He knew that becoming a great oak tree wasn't about his size or his appearance, but about his character and his ability to overcome challenges. He embraced the challenges that came his way, knowing that they were opportunities to grow and become stronger. He soaked up the sunlight, absorbed the water from the rain and snow, and reached his roots deep into the earth. With each passing year, he grew a little taller, a little wiser, and a little more resilient. And so the little acorn became a young oak sapling, then a young oak tree, and finally a majestic oak, just like the one he had admired for so many years. And as the majestic oak stood tall and proud in the forest, they knew that they had achieved their dreams because they had believed in themselves and never given up. They had learned that no matter how small or insignificant they may seem, they had the potential to become something great. And they passed on this wisdom to the next generation of acorns, teaching them that with patience, perseverance, and self-belief, they, too, could achieve their dreams. And that is the story of the little acorn's big dream, the end.